Chapter 324, Protection, 3. Sitting on a wooden chair, I attentively scanned the room. My task was to protect Jomnuk from any potential threats coming from Inferno, the monolith equivalent for the dwarves. They were an organization made up of Duergars, which were also known as Underdwarves. They held great infamy for being sneaky and cunning. Since Jomnuk focused all of his time on engineering, he was quite weak. It was exactly because of this that he needed to be protected. The only noteworthy thing about him was his mana capacity, but that was just about the same as mine. Unlike us humans, dwarves were quite weak in combat, their short statures being perfect evidence of it. They mainly relied on their artifacts, therefore, their ranks and other stats didn't really matter to them. At the lock, when they used to teach about dwarves, the professors would say, "A dwarf without an artifact is as easy to kill as a G-ranked human." The statement wasn't wrong. I'd personally witnessed just how helpless they were without their artifacts during the war above. But that wasn't the only thing I saw. I'd also seen them with their artifacts, and what I saw truly shocked me. They were incredibly strong. Although humans could also use artifacts, dwarves were able to utilize them to the very extreme, drawing out latent potential. Because of their highly developed brains, unlike other races, they could use a lot of artifacts at the same time. Typically, it took a lot of concentration to use just one artifact. Controlling an artifact required the user to manipulate their mana in complex patterns to activate the artifact. The sheer sophistication of some dwarven artifacts could fry a human's brain. This was how it typically went. These limitations didn't apply to dwarves who could use multiple artifacts at the same time. They were literally big brain people. Still, according to convention, that didn't change the fact Jomnuk was weak. Given how important of an individual he was, it was only natural that he had so many people guarding him. "Here, Douglas told me to give you this." Disrupting me out of my thoughts, Waylon flashed a mysterious grin before handing me an odd-looking red box. It looked quite out of place. "What's this?" I curiously asked, taking the box. The box felt light to the touch, and although it didn't look special, it had fine golden patterns sewn by the side of it. "Open it up and find out." "Okay." Waylon's mysterious attitude had piqued my interest. Just what was in the box that was making him grin like that? "See, clink." Finally opening the box, a subtle clicking sound rang out. "This." Upon opening the box, I let out a strange voice. Turning my head to face Waylon, he flashed me a slightly envious look. "Although I don't know what you did to make Douglas favor you so much, all I can say is that even I would have had difficulty getting that in my younger days." Leaning back on the chair, Waylon brushed his hair to the side. "Go on. Take it before we no longer have time. You shouldn't worry too much for now." Yes." Staring at the contents of the red box, I had no words to say. That was because inside it was a small, circular black pill. The pill's intoxicating fragrance invaded my nostrils and the mana within my body jumped up wildly. I couldn't hold back a smile. I was in euphoria. Wiping off my smug grin, I glanced at the pill once more to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Probulin. Medicine pill created through the combination of a blood ginseng, ash herb, and queen's coriander. Upon mixing the three ingredients together, a potent pill is created. Disclaimer: the pill can only be taken once per year. The medicinal properties of the medicine are too strong to be consumed often. Staring at the pill's description, I still could not find any words to say. I was honestly speechless. That was because this pill in front of me was extremely rare. Not only would it help me break through to C rank, but it also had other benefits such as improving my concentration and mana recovery. Without a doubt, this was a precious treasure. There's a room at the back you can use to break through. Waylon patted my shoulder and pointed towards a certain room in the distance. I'm counting on you. So better hurry up. I understand. Standing up, I gratefully looked at Waylon. Waylon waved it off and sat back down, and lowered his head slightly. Bah, there's no need to thank me. In fact, I should probably thank you. Still, it would be impolite of me to just take it without expressing a little bit of gratitude. You're way too polite for someone your age. If only my daughter could be just a tiny bit as polite as you. Smiling slightly, I didn't say anything. Knowing just how doting he was to his daughter, any comment that wasn't going to praise her was probably just going to annoy him. As such, I decided to not waste any more time and bid Waylon
goodbye.
I'll go take the pill now.
Ah.
Sure. Holding onto the box as though it was my most prized treasure, I followed Waylon's instructions and walked towards the back of the room. You need something? Blocking me from entering the room was one of the guards designated for the mission. He was an orc, and his large stature made him look extremely intimidating. Standing in front of him, I could vividly feel the difference in our size. Moreover, from the pressure that he was emitting, he was at least a rank above me. Yes, I need to use the room. I calmly replied with a nod. Although he looked extremely intimidating, for some reason, I wasn't scared. Well, if I had to be honest, ever since a while ago, I realized that my emotions had numbed down quite a lot. It took a lot to make me lose composure. Hell, even an SS rank didn't faze me, so what could a B rank orc do? Squinting his large eyes, the orc's deep voice resounded. For what purpose? To break through. Break through? Yes. I opened the box in my hand, revealing the pill that was in it. Instantly, a nice aroma shrouded the area we were in, but I didn't care. Since orcs couldn't use mana, I wasn't worried about the guard coveting the pill in my hands. And my thoughts were true as the orc had a disinterested look on his face. Frowning, the orc contemplated for a moment. Turning his head to face Waylon, who was sitting not so far away from where he was stationed, only upon seeing him give the heads up did the guard finally relax and take a step to the side. Understood. You may enter. Thank you. Boom. But just as I was about to enter, the whole place started to shake as a terrifying explosion sounded from above. Looking up, my brows furrowed for a second. It looks like the third wave has begun. I hope the others are all right. Since they refused to follow me on this mission, I did not know how they were faring. Although they were all capable, I really hoped nothing bad happened to them. After all, the third wave was going to be even more troublesome than the previous two waves. This wave was where the real war started. From here on, the real heavy hitters would finally make their move unlike before. This was why I was particularly worried about the others' safety. But, I also knew that it was their choice and I had to respect it. Click. Clank. Closing the door behind me, I looked around myself to survey the room. Although the place was not quite big, it was sufficiently large enough for my use. The interior of the room was rather plain. Other than a gray mat in the middle of the room, there were no other decorations. A meditating room true to its name. I was lucky to have found a good place to break through. I sure as hell wouldn't be comfortable breaking through to C rank with orcs staring down at me. Sitting crossed-legged on the mat, I carefully placed the box in front of me. Hoo. Been a while since I ingested something like this. Granted, a lot of time had passed ever since I took something like this. I shouldn't suffer any side effects from eating the pill. Alright, let's get this over with. Opening the box, my eyes instantly locked onto the small pill resting in the middle. A thin yellow glow shrouded the pill, giving it a faint, mysterious appearance. Other than that, a fragrant smell invaded the room, and the mana inside of my body trembled in excitement. Extending a hand to grab the pill, I felt a slight chill run through my body the moment my fingertips brushed its surface. Locking my brows tightly, I stuffed the pill in my mouth. Gulp! The instant I swallowed the pill, it transformed into a somewhat gentle and calm energy that swiftly entered all of the energy paths inside of my body. My body started to tremble noticeably. Unlike my previous experiences, I suffered no pain this time as everything flowed smoothly. Glancing at my arms, I could vividly feel my strength surging with each and every second. Closing my eyes, I continued to process the medicine inside of my body. It wasn't long before a bright light shot out of my body, and I felt an unfamiliar, refreshing strength fill every single pore.
Ah.
I missed this feeling. Vroom. Like a pulsating heart, the glow around my body rhythmically increased. Slowly, it became even more radiant. Before I knew it, the whole glow enveloped the room. Leviathan building, lock. He's so fast. Sitting inside of his room, staring at the red book in front of him, Kevin's face was filled with various emotions. He's already C rank. Because he could now see what Ren was doing, Kevin was able to tell that Ren had just broken through to C rank. A rank above him. It had to be noted that Ren used to be one rank weaker than him back when they trained together. For him to suddenly surpass Kevin made the latter feel a flame ignite inside of him. Like, I'll let you surpass me. Though others did not know this, Kevin was extremely competitive. He wasn't someone that liked to lose. For Ren to surpass him in strength, Kevin felt his body itching to train. Before that, turning his attention back towards the book, Kevin frowned. That was because a particular person caught his interest. It was the other human. The one that handed him the pill. He said his name was Oliver. Kevin had a feeling that the person was extremely important. He still couldn't quite figure out who he was though. All he knew was that his name was Oliver. He didn't know his last name yet.
Ha!
After a while, closing the book down, Kevin let out a sigh and put it back on the shelf. I should probably stop looking at it for now. Every time Kevin looked at the book, he felt like a stalker. Although he was glad that his friend was fine, at the end of the day, what he did was nothing short of stalking. As such, he decided to stop reading the book all the time. Perhaps once a month would do. Just to check how Ren was doing. On another note, another reason why he decided to stop reading the book was because he finally understood what he had to do. He was still going to join the Union. If Ren was ever going to come back, Kevin was prepared to help him out. After all, he did have a huge bounty on his head. If he got into a high enough position, he would be able to lend Ren a hand. It's still not enough, though. Kevin took out his phone and scrolled through his contact list. After thinking for a while, Kevin realized that if he truly wanted to help Ren out, he needed allies. He thought about asking Emma, but she was too preoccupied with her uncle's problem to be able to help him at all. There was also Jean, but well, he hated Ren, so Kevin couldn't really ask him for help. Regarding Donna and Monica, they were too closely tied to the Union. Kevin didn't know just how loyal they were to them. He didn't want to risk exposing Ren. He needed someone who had power, strong authority, and was trustworthy. As such, after a long time of contemplation, his finger paused on a certain contact. His brows knit in thought. Beep, beep. Pressing onto the contact, the phone soon started to ring. Kevin? Before long, a cold and crisp voice entered Kevin's ears. Scratching the side of his head, Kevin opened his mouth. Hey, Amanda. Do you have time? Equals equals equals. No, Oliver is not a mistake. Chapter 325, The Attack 1. Standing up, I looked at my arms. Compared to before, they were a little bit thicker. Clenching them into fists, I could see the veins on my arm pop out slightly. Lifting my shirt up, I could also see that my abs were a lot firmer than before. If I compared my current body to the body I used to have when I just arrived in this world, the difference was huge. My hard work paid off. Tying my hair with a black hairband, I calmly walked towards the door of the room. Placing my hand on the knob, I opened the door and stepped out. Click. Clank. How was it? Greeting me at the entrance of the room was Waylon. Scanning my body from top to bottom, a pleased look appeared on his face. Not bad, not bad, congrats on reaching C. Thank you. Lowering my head slightly, I thanked Waylon. Without him, I would have never been able to break through to C rank. Placing his hand on his chin, he muttered. I have to say, your talent is as good as my daughter's. Emma?
Yeah.
I see. I replied whilst trying to keep my face straight. As expected of a doting father. Best for me to just agree to whatever he was saying. Say, what do you think about joining the Union once the war ends? But his next words caused my body to freeze for a split second. It was only for a short period of time, as I quickly regained my composure. Lifting my head up, I shook my head and apologized. Sorry, I might have to refuse the offer for now. I'm planning to join the Lock as a professor. That was a lie. Although I was indeed interested in joining the Lock as a professor, it wasn't feasible right now. Well, a few of the people that I wanted to recruit for my group would indeed come from the Lock, so it wouldn't be a terrible idea. But as I've said, that was well into the future. For now, I had to focus on something else. Like the current protection mission. That's a pity. Fortunately, Waylon did not insist and proceeded to sit back down. Interlocking his hands together, Waylon's face suddenly turned serious. About the plan that we agreed on with Douglas, I'm still a bit worried. Really? My brows slightly knit in surprise. I sort of expected this. Ever since I told him and Douglas about my plan regarding the protection mission, I had a feeling that they were still worried about something going wrong. It was understandable though. After all, it was quite a risky one. In order to increase the chances of this plan working, the three of us agreed to tell the least amount of people possible. Though the chances were small, there was the possibility of a spy being here, and because the details of the plan couldn't be leaked lest it backfires, I opted to tell Waylon, whom I trusted and believed could give me input on the idea. After all, I was not perfect. There could be holes in my plan. Plus, just because the chip in my head was helping me didn't mean that I was now a genius. I could only think faster, not think better. I've talked to Douglas about it, and although he seemed a little bit concerned at first, we came to the conclusion that if this plan works, we're going to massively increase our chances in the war. That's great. I replied while also taking a seat. Crossing my legs, I asked. What about Jomnuk? Did you tell him about the plan yet? We have. He's on board. Waylon nodded. Okay. Propping my elbow on the armrest of the chair, I supported my chin and let out a long sigh. Can't believe I'm going to do something like this. Even though I was the one that proposed the plan, I couldn't believe just how crazy it was. Not only would it be more dangerous than the war going on outside, but there was a very real chance of me dying. But if I could pull it off, then not only would I be able to give the dwarves a massive advantage in the war, I would also get the dwarves on my side. This was fundamental in granting me immunity against the Union. Although the risks of this mission were huge, so was the payout. Ren.
Hmm.
Disrupting me out of my thoughts was Waylon, who asked, I've been meaning to ask, but now that Douglas found your name, are you going to keep your real name on the achievements board?
Good
point. Right, the only reason I put my name there was to have Douglas find out about my identity. Now that he knew, it would be better to change it. If you want, I can help you change it. Waylon offered before taking out a small device from his dimensional space. He then turned to face me. Have you thought of a name yet? Name? Furrowing my brows, I started to ponder. What nickname should I use? Should I go for something overly dramatic or simple? I asked such questions inside of my mind as I tried to think of a good nickname for myself. After musing for a couple of minutes, lifting my head, I responded with a slight grin. Let's go with Carolium. Raising his brow, Waylon curiously asked. Carolium? That sounds familiar. Wait, isn't that blue or something in Latin?
Yeah.
Waylon scratched the side of his face before suddenly pointing at my eyes. I take it that you chose blue due to your eyes? You're right. It was a simple nickname. After thinking about it for a while, all the nicknames that I came up with were a bit too cringy. As such, I just decided to go simple. Blue, for the color of my eyes. The reason I chose to have it in Latin was because plain blue was just boring. Had to have at least this much. I've long let go of my dark days. As if he could read my thoughts, Waylon wryly smiled. All right, as long as you're satisfied with it. Shaking his head, he proceeded to change my name on the achievement board. As he was changing my name, lifting his head, he cautiously looked around the room. After making sure that no one was listening, he lowered his voice and whispered. Back to the previous topic, how ready are you? Don't worry, there are no problems on my end. That's good. Waylon sighed in relief. From how he kept asking me the same question, it was evident just how worried he was about the plan. But it was understandable, as failure was not an option. I won't bet on my life without making ample preparations, that I can assure you. I reassured. As I've said before, the upcoming operation was going to be extremely dangerous. Any mistakes and I wouldn't know how I died. There was no way I was going to go there without making ample preparations. All right, take this. Extending his hand, Waylon passed me a small ring. What is this? I curiously asked as I took the ring from Waylon. Looking at it from the top of my palm, it looked like a plain old ring. Leaning back onto his seat in a comfortable manner, Waylon replied, inside of it are the things that you previously requested. Clenching the hand holding onto the ring, I nodded my head and put the ring away. That's good. Northern Tower. A chilly wind blew past, lifting a couple of fallen leaves into the air as an icy killing intent enveloped the surroundings. Boom! Boom! Terrifying explosions rang in the sky. What followed after were numerous thunder-like blasts and energy ripples that spread throughout the whole battlefield. The energy contained within each explosion was so strong that the aftershocks of every impact would even affect those far away. Clank! Hind defended against the attack of a demon amidst the chaotic battle. Sparks immediately shot out at their exchange. Apart from that specific demon, none came his way, and that was because... Bang! Heek! A blast of energy ferociously smashed against the chest of a nearby demon, sending it flying away. Ayo! 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 What followed after were the cries of 3 wolves as they jumped towards the demon and chewed him out. Thanks. Ava thanked Leopold, who was next to her. Sheeing. Unsheathing his sword, Leopold cut down. Black blood spilled from above. Turning his head, he replied. Save the thanks for later, focus on helping Hein out. You're a team, remember that. Yes. Toodle 2. Blowing onto the flute, Ava redirected the wolves towards the demon attacking Hein. Flying around her was Newton, her other pet. Compared to the wolves that were all each around E rank, Newton was a little bit weaker, but that was fine to Ava since its task was to watch out for any ambushes and warn her about strong opponents. Once it spotted someone strong nearing her direction, it would quickly warn her, when in turn Ava would report to Leopold. On a different note, Ava's abilities could only allow her to control 5 pets at the moment. She was currently missing one, but given that it took a lot of mana to keep the flute active, she decided against getting one more. Clang! Clang! The wolves fiercely jumped the demon. Biting onto the lower leg of the demon, black blood seeped down from their mouths. Letting out a shriek, the demon tried to move back, but before it could do that, another wolf quickly bit down on its other leg, preventing it from moving. Heek! Helpless, the demon clawed down towards the nearest wolf. But right as the claw was about to hit the wolf, it quickly let go and jumped back.
Grrr.
Glaring at the demon, black blood seeped from the gaps of the wolf's teeth. Toodle 2. Blowing onto her flute, Ava, who was watching by the sidelines, quickly ordered the wolf to once again attack. Rough. Once the flute sounded, the wolf's eyes shone slightly as it barked out loud. Tensing its legs, it once again shot towards the demon.
Ugh.
But right after sending that command, Ava suddenly felt her body grow weak. Holding onto her head, Ava stumbled slightly. Her complexion had paled considerably, and her vision was slowly starting to get blurry. She was showing signs of mana fatigue. I need to get this fixed. Ava clenched the hand holding onto the flute. Had the flute not been broken, the mana expenditure would have been far less than what she was spending at the moment. Unfortunately, because it was broken, she could only tame 3 beasts. To make matters worse, controlling each beast took a considerable amount of mana. If not for that, she would have been able to fight for longer. However, that same flute was what changed her destiny. Ava, are you okay? Feeling a light tap on her shoulder, Ava turned her head. Hein? Though her head was dizzy, she was instantly able to recognize Hein's face. Looks like he managed to defeat the demon. A relieved look appeared on her face. Oi, are you okay? Supporting Ava, Hein looked at her pale complexion. Frowning, he looked at his wrist. More specifically, at a small bracelet. Shaking his head, he turned towards Leopold. Leopold, do you have any mana recovery potions on you? Bang! Blowing the head of a demon, Leopold turned to look at Hein. Upon seeing Ava's complexion, he immediately checked his ring. However, he too shook his head and replied. I've also run out. Looks like it is time for us to retreat. Understood. Turning his attention back to Ava, Hein supported her by the arm and helped her walk back into the tower. Because this was where the real fight started, the radius of the line that protected the tower increased considerably. It was also because of this that they were quite far from the tower despite being in the second line of defense. Shiying. You guys keep going, I'll cover you. Cutting another demon, Leopold paved the way for Ava and Hein back to the tower. Thank you. They turned back, heading towards the tower again. Chapter 326, The Attack, 2. Clang! Clang! Inside an enormous room, the sound of metal clashing against metal resounded across the empty space as a dull slim sword intersected a sharp, large broadsword. Upon clashing, a circular wave of wind pressure shot out from the intersecting point of the clash. KHHH. Letting out a groan, I stumbled back and stabbed my sword towards the ground to keep my body steady. Long live magical swords that could pierce the earth as if it were butter, they never get nicked from such weak stabs. That was what I was supposed to say, but staring at the sword in my hand, I let out a depressed sigh. Here goes another sword. Once I managed to steady my body, I realized that my breathing was incredibly heavy.
Ha! Ha!
You've improved considerably. A leisurely voice reached my ears. Lifting my head up, I looked at Waylon, who was standing opposite of me with his broadsword hanging by the side of his shoulders. Damn you for lifting that like it weighs nothing. I cursed internally but kept a smile on my face. Wearing a thin smile on his face, he complimented me, saying, compared to a month ago, your swordsmanship truly improved quite a bit. I'm still far from it. Slumping down on the ground, I let go of the sword and tried to catch my breath. It's been about 3 weeks since joining the protection mission, and so far, everything had been calm. But, of course, this was merely the calm before the storm. I knew that soon enough the Duergars would attack. This was why I chose to spend most of my time training with Waylon. Every little bit of strength was instrumental for me. My life also kind of depended on it. Well, you've shown significant improvements over the last couple of weeks. Be glad that we had this much time to train.
Yeah.
I guess. Inferno was known to be an extremely sly and cunning organization. This meant that, unless they made enough preparations, they wouldn't attack. This was probably the only reason why they had still not made a move yet. On another note, our current location was quite well hidden, so it would take a lot of time and resources to find this place. Well, maybe before. Things are a bit different now. Sitting on the ground next to me, Waylon asked. How are the preparations on your side? I'm ready. All that really matters is whether Jomnuk is ready or not. He played a critical role in my plans. If he suddenly changed his mind last minute, everything would be ruined. Patting me on the shoulder, Waylon tried to reassure me. Don't worry about him. We've already talked it through with him. As soon as we hear something about the enemies, we'll immediately go ahead with the plans. All right, that's all I need to hear. Propping my body up with the aid of the sword, I slowly stood up. Removing the sword from the ground, I turned to look at Waylon once more. As long as Jomnuk follows through with the arrangements, I will take care of the rest. You can count on me for that. Well, I sure hope you do. Similarly standing up, Waylon pointed his broadsword in my direction with a challenging look on his face. As we wait for those bastards to make a move, how about we continue our little spar? Every little bit of strength you gain will be of extra help for when you're going to clear the me. Twang. Cutting Waylon off was a small ringing sound. Give me a sec. Rummaging through his pockets, Waylon took out a small phone-like device and answered. Hello? Because Waylon didn't put the phone on speaker, I wasn't able to hear what the other individual on the phone was saying, but judging from Waylon's facial expression, I knew that it had to do with the upcoming mission. His face steadily grew grimmer as he listened to the call. All right, understood, we'll be there soon. Hanging up the call, Waylon put his broadsword away and turned to face me. An unprecedented look of solemn determination clouded his face. All right, Ren, it's time for us to move. The information about the hideout has been leaked. Understood. Putting my sword away, I followed Waylon back into the hideout. Talk about timing. Right as we finished talking about the situation, the Duergars suddenly decided to attack. Wasn't coincidental though. Ashton City. The outline of a cafe appeared in Kevin's vision. From the outside, the place looked like any regular cafe. Scribbled on a small blackboard standing outside of the cafe was a list of drinks and dishes. The clear glass walls made it possible to see through the cafe from the outside, and the plants and vegetation lining the place perfectly completed the structure, which was in part made of wood. It had a nice ambience, its vibe and general atmosphere alone should have made it a popular spot. Yet, things were different today. Looking around, Kevin found the place to be quite deserted. Amanda must have cleared up the place beforehand. As expected of someone with as much power as her. With a single call, she could clear up an area. Ding! Ding! A small chime rang as soon as Kevin opened the door of the place. It was rather pleasant to hear. The moment he stepped foot inside of the cafe, a heavy scent of coffee invaded his nostrils. Because there was no one inside of the place, it took little to no time for Kevin to spot Amanda. Sitting in the corner of the room, next to the glass window, the gentle glow of the sun enveloped her perfect figure, enhancing her features. Compared to when he had last seen her, Amanda looked a lot more beautiful. However, that wasn't the only change. She also looked a lot more mature compared to when he had last seen her. Gone was her cold looks, and what replaced it was a calm one that looked as though it would remain unfazed even in the harshest of situations. She truly had the aura of a leader. Over here. Similarly spotting Kevin, seated at the back of the cafe, Amanda raised her hand. Smiling, Kevin walked up to her and sat down. To think that it took over 2 weeks to schedule an appointment with you. Just how busy are you? Do you want anything? Smiling slightly, Amanda passed the menu to Kevin. Taking the menu, Kevin slowly went through the list of things. Whilst he looked through the menu, Amanda put both hands on the table and went straight to the point. Kevin, why did you ask to meet me? Lifting his head up and remembering the reason he was here, Kevin's brows knit in worry. Glancing around to make sure that no one was present, he lowered his head and whispered. Actually, there is something really important I want to discuss with you. You don't need to whisper, this whole place is owned by me. Apart from me and you, no one can hear what you're saying. Amanda calmly said, much to Kevin's surprise. Must be nice to be rich. Kevin muttered in a low voice as he landed back. Then, putting the menu down, he relaxed a little. Staring at Kevin opposite of her, Amanda once again asked. So, what did you want to talk about? Right. Lifting his head and staring at Amanda straight in the eyes, Kevin softly said. You may not believe me, but Ren is alive. His heart skipped a beat. He didn't know how she would react. He didn't even know if he should tell her. But, he had to. He had to do something to help his friend. Bracing himself, Kevin waited for Amanda's reply. However, as soon as his words faded from the atmosphere, Kevin was met with an awkward silence. Seeing that Amanda's expression had not changed, Kevin thought that she didn't hear correctly. Maybe the shock was too great? He decided to repeat his sentence, for Amanda's sake. Ren is Ollie. I know. Amanda cut him off. Crossing his arms together, Kevin repeatedly nodded his head. I know that it must be tough for you to swallow this piece of, What? Kevin stood up in shock and looked at Amanda, who was still quietly sitting in the seat opposite to him. You knew? Yes. Amanda nodded her head. I've known for about 4 months now. What? Slumping back on his seat, Kevin absent-mindedly looked at Amanda. You knew? He couldn't even muster the energy to say anything else. Amanda literally blew the wind out of his sails. But how is that possible? Amanda doesn't have the book or any similar means. It was then that it finally hit him. Was it right after he escaped the monolith? According to what Rin said back on the book, once he escaped the monolith, he was chased out of the human domain. This meant that during the brief time he escaped, he had met up with Amanda. Staring at Kevin's deflated face, Amanda shook her head. No, it's not what you think. What do you mean? Kevin frowned. Taking a sip of her coffee, she replied. He did not meet up with me, I found out by myself. You found out yourself? Correct. Scratching the side of his head, Kevin tilted his head in confusion. How did you find out? Secret. Amanda shook her head with a small smile on her face. She couldn't quite say that she found out after stalking the guy that was taking care of Nola. Come on. Obviously, Kevin was surprised by the answer as he leaned back in disappointment. This is too much to process. Shouldn't this have been the other way? Putting her black purse on the table, Amanda checked her watch. Is that all you wanted to tell me? No. Lifting his head, Kevin shook his head before letting out a long sigh.
Huh?
Although he was surprised by the fact that Amanda knew, Kevin quickly moved on. This at least saved him the trouble of explaining how he knew. Fiddling with the menu in his hand, Kevin spoke up. Since you know Rin is alive, you also probably know that he is 876. Plap. This time it was Amanda's turn to be surprised as she dropped the cup in her hand. Fortunately for her, the cup was empty and nothing spilled. Still, with wide open eyes, Amanda asked. Are you referring to that 876? That 876?
Yeah.
Kevin replied as he massaged his forehead. I thought she knew that. As expected of Ren, he just had to leave a massive mess. From her reaction, he understood that she had still not figured that part out. He was just as shocked as she was when he found out that Ren was 876. Basically, this is what happened. And so Kevin started recounting Ren's story to Amanda. At least the information he knew. The more he talked, the colder Amanda's face became. But that didn't last for long as it disappeared just as fast. For a short second, Kevin thought that he was hallucinating. And that's it. Once Kevin finished recounting what he knew about Ren, Amanda frowned. Musing to herself, she bit on the edge of her sweater. After a while, she said. So, in short, the reason you contacted me was because you wanted to help in the future once Ren would try to come back to the human domain? That's correct. Kevin replied with a surprised expression. He didn't even ask anything and she had already figured out his intentions. As expected of Amanda. She truly was the daughter of the clan leader of the first-ranked guild. Picking up the cup that she had previously dropped, Amanda gently put it on the table. Putting her bag on her shoulder, she checked the time. 4:34 p.m. It was almost time to pick up Nola. Staring at Amanda in confusion, Kevin asked. Are you in or not? Standing up, Amanda nodded her head. I'll help the best way I can. I see, I'm glad. A look of relief appeared on Kevin's face as he leaned back on the chair. With your aid, we might be able to help him out once he gets back. Unfortunately for Kevin, as he said that, he wasn't able to notice the complicated look on Amanda's face. Chapter 327, The Attack, 3. Click. Clank. Upon entering the hideout, I was immediately greeted by a solemn atmosphere. Waylon, you're finally here. Once Waylon entered, Jomnuk, sitting with his arms crossed in the middle of the living room, sighed in relief. Sitting down on the seat opposite to Jomnuk, Waylon inquired, his tone serious. An unprecedented feeling of grim concern clouded his face. What's the situation here? According to reports from the spies, the enemies are preparing to attack by tonight. Answering Waylon, in Jomnuk's stead, was a dwarf. He had thick eyebrows and long, flowing black hair. Most striking were his thick arms that looked to be the size of a small football. It gave off the impression of breaking rocks by merely flexing them. Fitting for a race of miners. Tonight? Waylon's brows furrowed in thought. Subtly turning his head to face me, I faintly nodded back. Upon seeing me nod, Waylon's tense shoulders relaxed a little. Because everyone was currently focused on the situation, our little exchange went unnoticed. To think they've already found this hideout in a month's time. As expected, there must be a spy hiding amongst the upper echelon. We have a traitor in our midst. It was normal for both sides to have spies planted. Unlike the Union and the Monolith, where the power balance leaned more on the Monolith's side, the difference in strength between the dwarves and the Duergars was just about the same. This meant that both sides had to resort to more discreet means to weaken the other. For example, planting agents in the upper echelon of each organization. A classic tactic in warfare, there was never a conflict where spies or intelligence-gathering divisions were not put to use. Methods of subterfuge often laid waste to enemy armies, as it is often said, "Know thy enemy, and thou shalt win 100 battles." However, the nature of conflict here brought about a certain issue. In order to be a spy for the other organization, one must show that they have mana tainted with demonic energy. Unlike the Union that could not replicate this, the dwarves were capable of doing it. That just proved how advanced the dwarven species was. Alright, although I didn't expect them to find this place so early, now that the situation has escalated to that point, we must get ready. Standing up, Waylon looked at the others and started to issue orders. Everyone, do as trained. Guard each perimeter of the place, and make sure to check all the ventilations and food for any poison or gas. We all know just how sneaky those bastards can be. Understood. Everyone nodded their head in agreement. Since Waylon was the strongest by a large margin, no one had any qualms with his arrangements. Not even Jomnuk, who instead seemed rather pleased with the new directives. Whilst everyone was busy organizing themselves, walking up to Jomnuk, I tapped him on the shoulder. "Sir Jomnuk, I would like to have a word with you in private." Raising his brow, Jomnuk tilted his head to the side. "Human? What is it?" Fidgeting my fingers, I replied in a quiet tone, "Well, you see, I'd ideally prefer to discuss this in private rather than in the open." "Why?" Wariness flashed in Jomnuk's eyes. Looking around the room, towards the other guard in his post, Jomnuk stared back at me. "If you have anything to say to me, say it here." Scratching the side of my neck, I smiled wryly. "Well, you see, I can't really say it out here since it's something I can only ask you in a more comfortable setting." The matter regarding the chip in my head was a sensitive topic. The fewer people that knew, the better. Unfortunately for me, my vague words were irritating Jomnuk. He started to raise his voice. "What is it? Spit it out already." Glancing around the room, I lowered my voice slightly. "You see, I have something stuck inside of my head, and I'd like to have it looked at. I've heard that you are one of the best engineers that have ever lived. So I wanted to ask you for advice." The moment I said the words, "one of the best engineers," a flattering look appeared on Jomnuk's face. "Well, there's no need to exaggerate like that." No, I'm not exaggerating. I have to give credit where credit is due. I really was serious with my words. As Ryan said, Jomnuk was indeed one of the top dwarven engineers available. My words weren't empty acts of sycophancy. "You have something in your head?" Jomnuk asked, his tone sounding a lot more comfortable than before, evidently pleased by my words. "Correct. That was why I wanted to ask you for advice." "Might as well." Standing up, Jomnuk glanced at the other guards present in the room and shooed them away. "As you've heard, I need to help him with something." If possible, I'd like for you lots to clear the room. That's not possible. The dwarf standing guard immediately refused. Oh. Why is that? Jomnook's face sank. Unfazed, the dwarf replied with a straight face. I'm sorry, sir, but since your life could endanger, we can't allow you to be left alone. In simpler words, they weren't willing to trust me. Bah, what is there to worry about? Since you guys are waiting outside, there is no worry about anyone coming in to kidnap me. But... Before the dwarf could argue, Jomnook cut him off and pointed in my direction. If you're talking about him being a threat, scratch that thought. I've got enough artifacts on me to protect myself from a mere C rank. Mere C rank. Somehow, those words hurt a lot more than I expected. The human over here is also with Waylon, so questioning him is the same as questioning Waylon. Understood. Unable to refute any longer, the dwarf eventually nodded in defeat. Turning his head to face me, the dwarf said. I'll give you guys 10 minutes. That'll be enough, thank you. I replied back. Jomnook nodded in satisfaction before sitting back down on his seat. I'll also be leaving then. Waylon, who was watching the whole thing from the sidelines, also stood up and followed the others out. He then put his hand on my shoulder. Be quick, we don't know when those Durgars will make a move. It's best if you end the conversation early. I got it. All right then. Satisfied, Waylon left with the others. Click. Clank. Soon, the door closed and the room was enveloped with silence. The first to speak up was Jomnook. So. With his arms crossed, and a smug look on his face, he asked. How was my acting? Turning my head, the edges of my lips pulled upwards. Oscar-worthy. How much time has passed? The dwarf from before muttered in annoyance as he looked back at the room where Ren and Jomnook were discussing. Don't worry, nothing will happen with me here. Waylon said with a slight smile. Unfortunately for him, his words did not ease the dwarf's worries. Frustratingly looking at Waylon, the dwarf said, Human, I don't doubt your abilities, but you just don't know how vile those malevolent cretins are. You're right. I've not faced many of them yet, but that doesn't mean I don't know what you're talking about. Upon getting this mission assigned, Waylon spent a lot of time researching the Durgars. From how they fought to what types of strategies they used. He wasn't just going to blindly protect Jomnook without knowing at least this much. I've done my research and I can guarantee you that as of right now, no one will be able to enter the room. Raising his hand, a thin glow enveloped it. Staring at the dwarf, Waylon flashed a slight, fox-like smile. That's because I've already sealed the whole room with my mana. Unless someone kills me, no one will be able to do anything. I see. Having seen this much, the dwarf couldn't say anything else. Even he had to admit that it was pretty safe. Click. Clank. And right on cue, the door opened. Coming out from it were Ren and Jomnook. With his arms behind his back, and a pleased smile on his face, Jomnook looked around. Seeing the tense faces of everyone present, Jomnook chuckled. As you can see, I'm totally fine. The human did nothing to me. Please wait, sir. Blocking Jomnook's path was the same dwarf as before. The moment the dwarf blocked Jomnook's path, his face scrunched up. Angus, what are you doing? I apologize for my rudeness in advance. Before Jomnook could say anything, the dwarf named Angus took a small black object out of nowhere. Pressing onto it, red lights shot out from the box, completely enveloping Jomnook, whose face looked extremely pissed. Beep beep. It wasn't long before the X-rays disappeared and the box rang. Lowering his head and checking onto the black box, Angus finally relaxed. Everything is all right. The check came out clean. Of course, it came out clean. Jomnuk angrily spat. What do you think could have happened with you guys guarding outside? Putting the device away, Angus stood up straight and replied. Sir, I'm just doing my job. What Angus just did was check whether Jomnuk was truly fine via scanning device. The device that he used was capable of detecting poisons that may have entered Jomnuk's system unknowingly. Not only that, it had many other interesting functions such as measuring the skeletal structure of the target as well as diseases and other stuff. This guy is pretty thorough. Seems like he even came prepared for all eventualities, Rin mused from the side. After all, one didn't have to be strong to poison someone. Sir, my priority is your safety. You can punish me if you want. Staring at Angus from the side, Jomnuk's frown receded. After a while, letting out a sigh, he helplessly waved his hand. Sigh, forget about it. I know that you're doing this for my own safety. Just as things were calming down, Jomnuk glared at Angus and raised his voice. But that doesn't mean I'm not pissed. If something like this happens again, be prepared to face the consequences. Now, Jomnuk. There's no need for that. Stepping in between Jomnuk and Angus, Waylon tried to de-escalate the situation. Just let it go for now. He's merely doing his job. There is no need to be so harsh on him. Humph. Jomnuk turned his head away and crossed his arms. Helpless, Waylon patted him on the shoulder. Anyway, it's time for dinner. Let's go eat. Dinner? All right. Behaving like an appeased child, once Waylon stepped in, the whole situation calmed down as Jomnuk's mood shifted at the mention of dinner. That's good, I'll follow you soon. Winking at Angus, Waylon urged him to follow Jomnuk to the dining hall. I owe you one, human. Throwing Waylon a grateful look, Angus brought Jomnuk to the dining hall. Thanks to Waylon, Jomnuk was no longer angry and this did not give him a hard time. I'm glad that's sorted. Waylon wiped his forehead. Then, turning his head, he proceeded to walk in Ren's direction. How was it? Has he managed to solve the problem that you had? Turning around, Ren proudly smiled and started endlessly praising Jomnuk. But, of course. As expected of the best dwarf engineer, I never once doubted his abilities. As soon as I showed him the problem, he was quickly able to tell me where the source lay. He even guaranteed that it can be fixed in a little less than a week. Truly marvelous. That fast? Waylon sounded quite surprised. What else do you expect from the best dwarven engineer? Something as little as my problem is nothing in his eyes. Is that so? Wryly smiling, Waylon looked towards the other guards standing in the room. Then, turning his attention back to Ren, he beckoned him to follow along. As long as you're happy. Let's go, it's time to eat. Food? Great. I'm starving. Rubbing his stomach, under the guards' watchful gazes, Ren followed Waylon into the dining hall. Truly marvelous. Chapter 328, The Attack, 4. Northern Tower. How long do you think they will keep the barrier this time? Leopold asked Ava, standing next to her. He glanced at her for a moment, wondering what was going through her mind. I don't know. She replied in a soft tone, her eyes transfixed, gazing into the distance. She seemed preoccupied, an endless stream of thoughts rushing in her head. From time to time, ripples would appear on the barrier. Whenever that happened, waves would form around it, enveloping the mountain. Ever since a week ago, the situation was getting more and more out of hand. The attacks of the demons were more ruthless and relentless than ever before. The lower-ranked demons even threw themselves at the barrier, turning into a mush of blood and gore. It was honestly gruesome. If not for the barrier that had been activated, things would have been extremely dire for everyone. "Are you going somewhere?" Hein asked from the side. Lifting her head and looking at Hein, Ava nodded.
Yeah.
"Where are you going?" "To fix this." Ava lifted her hand. In the middle of her palm lay a pale green flute. "You're fixing that?"
Yeah.
It became apparent to her from the last fight that the flute had some serious flaws. If she did not fix it, once the barrier stopped functioning, she would be in big trouble. "Great, I'm coming with you. I've got to fix my shield too." He raised his shield, showing it to Ava. "Oh, wow. You fought with that?" She was surprised to see it. The state of the shield was quite bad. Not only was it filled with cracks, but it was also marked with numerous indentations. In its current state, Ava wouldn't be surprised if it would break at a simple touch. It made her wonder if buying a new one would be better. Putting the shield away into his dimensional space, Hein looked towards the barrier in the distance.
Yeah.
"I need to get it fixed before the barrier goes down." "You guys planning on going to the utility center?" Disrupting their conversation was a familiar, tired voice. "Hua, if so, I'm coming too." Yawning, Leopold walked over to them and flashed his gun. "I've run out of bullets." "Ah, I'm starving." Sitting on a round table, Jomnuk, alongside Waylon and a few other individuals, stared at the beautiful dishes presented in front of them. It looked sumptuous, to say the least. Meanwhile, Ren remained standing. He kept his back straight and stared intently at the food on the table. "Shall we get straight to eating?" Pulling his sleeves up, Jomnuk eagerly looked at the food in front of him. His eyes shone brightly. Picking up the silverware beside him, Jomnuk prepared to dig into the food. "Please wait, sir." But just as he was about to eat, he was once again stopped by Angus, one of the dwarven guards assigned to him, and the one that had previously checked up on him. The interruption obviously did not sit well with Jomnuk. What is it this time? The constant meddling was starting to get to him. Lowering his head, Angus apologized. But even as he did, he chose not to stop in his task. "I apologize, but we have to do our regular check." "Be quick." Putting the silverware down, Jomnuk grumpily leaned back on his chair. He was obviously not pleased with being stopped from eating, but since that was something he had gone through for over a month, it had become a mild annoyance by then. Already used to Jomnuk's behavior, Angus didn't mind it and proceeded to take out the same device from before. Tapping on the device, a red glow soon enveloped the whole table. The device not only checked if the food had poison, but it also confirmed whether the tableware and glasses were hygienic and safe. After all, food wasn't the only means to poison someone. Ding! Ding! It wasn't long before the results came out. Once everything came out clean, Angus finally took a step back. "Looks like there is no poison in the food." "Thank you for waiting, sir." Tisk. Clicking his tongue, Jomnuk picked the tableware and finally started to eat. Putting his fork on a large piece of meat, Jomnuk devoured it in a single bite, lacking any reserve. Chewing on the food, he looked at Waylon and loudly asked, almost spitting saliva and pieces of meat everywhere. "How is the situation going upstairs?" Cleaning his mouth with a napkin, Waylon inquired, "Upstairs? Do you mean the war?"
Yeah.
"That." Jomnuk waved dismissively. Since he was the only one who knew the code that granted access to the defensive system's main database, Jomnuk held some curiosity for the situation above. Putting the napkin on top of his things, Waylon replied leisurely, from what I've heard, the situation upstairs is under control as of right now. The dwarves have currently set up the barrier, and so, for the moment, things are quite calm. I see. Taking another bite of the meat, Jomnuk nodded in understanding. So, you're saying that, for now, things are still under control, right? Correct. But, based on reports, the barrier is slowly running out of energy. How long will it last? Any idea? From what Douglas said, about 6 to 8 more months. MHM. Jomnuk grumbled, frowning deeply while chewing on the meat. That's a lot less time than I expected. From my initial calculations, it should have been far longer than that. It's probably because the forces sent there are a lot stronger than we initially anticipated, Waylon replied. According to original estimates, the troops sent by the demons should have been a tad bit weaker. Unfortunately, that turned out to be wrong. The demons had sent a tougher task force than expected. They weren't pulling any punches. There's also the problem with the weather. Because of it, the barrier has been set up prematurely and an extra bit of energy was used during that time. The demons weren't dumb. Once the barrier was set up, they instantly attacked it with all their might in hopes of consuming its energy. It was exactly because of that attack the barrier got disrupted, making it consume more energy to stabilize. Thus, it would last a lot less than originally intended. If things kept going that way, there was a very real possibility of losing the war. Taking another bite of the meat, Jomnuk muttered in a gloomy tone, "This is quite troublesome." A solemn, tense atmosphere shrouded the room as each individual present couldn't help but frown at the turn of events. For the next couple of minutes, no one spoke a word. Everyone just silently ate. This lasted till Jomnuk finally broke the silence by putting his cutlery down and burping out loud. I'm full. Ren, who was not far from Jomnuk, showed a displeased expression at the burp. He wasn't the only one as every person in the room was a little grossed out. Ignoring the look given by everyone, taking a toothpick, Jomnuk asked the rest, "Now that I think about it, you guys also seem to be hungry." Pointing at the food on the table, Jomnuk flashed a grin. "Since I've eaten my fill and there's still enough food, why don't you guys have some?" "No sir, we can't." Angus tried to refuse, but he was promptly cut off by Jomnuk. The latter glared at him, seemingly done with his guard's antics. "Enough." His rough voice echoed throughout the whole room. "Ever since a while ago you've been constantly annoying me. Is that your new job? You already checked the food, huh?" "Yes," Angus replied quietly. He lowered his head, not wanting to offend Jomnuk. "Then what's the fucking problem? Since you've checked it and it's going to waste, let the others eat it." Pointing towards the empty seats at the table, Jomnuk looked at everyone in the room. "Go. Eat. There's plenty for all of you. Don't mind me." The first one to move was Ren, who sat down on a seat close to Waylon. Taking a fork, he leaned forward and stabbed it towards one of the dishes, much to the surprise of the others. Putting the fork in his mouth, Ren smiled in satisfaction. "Not bad." Good, good, I like your guts, human." Laughing boisterously, Jomnuk looked towards the others and pointed at Ren in a provoking manner. "It seems like this human over here is the only one that has balls. Don't mind me." Finally, the others could no longer stand it and similarly sat down, much to Angus's dismay. Taking a small bite of the food, Waylon looked towards Angus and helplessly shrugged his shoulder. "Just let it go, Angus. Why don't you have something to eat as well? Eating won't hurt them much. I'm here, nothing will happen. Let loose a little." Staring at everyone eating joyfully at the dinner table, Angus eventually gave up and sat down, joining them. I guess you're right. Taking a fork, he started to dig in the food. Good, good. I'm glad everyone is enjoying the food. Sitting on his seat and looking at everyone eating merrily, Jomnuk laughed in satisfaction and slapped the table. This is the atmosphere that I wanted. Not the gloomy and unbearable one that we've had over the past month. Stabbing his fork at one of the dishes on the table, Jomnuk took a bite of the food and spoke, "You know what, watching everyone eat has made me hungry again." And so, for the next hour, a peaceful atmosphere shrouded the dinner table. Unfortunately, it did not last for long. One of the guards suddenly stopped eating. He frowned, staring at his plate. He was the same orc that had stopped Rin from entering the meditation room not too long ago. Something isn't right, he muttered. Leaning his hand on the table, the orc's complexion paled suddenly. Something was gravely wrong. "Hey, are you okay?" Coming to his aid was another guard who tapped him on the shoulder. "What happened? Is it the food?" "Urk." Holding onto his neck, the orc desperately tried to speak. He had trouble mustering any strength. He weakly slumped on the chair. He was just barely hanging in there. Jomnuk, who was watching by the side, did not sit still. He immediately stood up and ordered the rest, "Someone quickly call the medic. The situation is serious FO. He couldn't finish his words. Joining the orc, Jomnuk's complexion paled out of nowhere. At a speed much faster than before, he suddenly lost strength and stumbled. Holding on to his head, he looked around in confusion. Jomnuk's vision turned blurry, but he tried to hold on. In a raspy tone almost completely devoid of life, he uttered, "What is going on? I can't circulate the mana inside me?" It was then that he finally noticed it. Everyone by the table was in a similar state. Ugh. In pain, Jomnuk looked towards Waylon. "Waylon, I think we've been poisoned." "Yes, it seems like it." With complete calm, Waylon stood up and scanned the room. Unlike the others, his complexion was much better, but that was only on the outside. What kind of poison did they use? Though slower than the others, he too was also losing his ability to use mana. He had to find the culprit quickly. "Jomnuk, stick close to me." "Yes." Nodding his head, Jomnuk tried to remain close to Waylon. "Ren, are you okay? Quickly go to the other room to hide." Moving towards Ren, Waylon tried to get him to safety.